Good morning and happy Sunday to all you Detroit Sports Podcast Network fans out there. This is another episode of the Detroit Sports Countdown, where the Doc ranks the top 5 stories in the world of Detroit sports, according to me. Thank you again for everyone that's been downloading the podcast on the network and showing support. I greatly appreciate it. And after the first episode, I got some great response. I got your emails. I got your texts. I got your messages on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. And I wrote a couple down, and I really appreciate it. Derek from Walled Lake said, even for a Sparta, you're doing a great job. Keep it going. Chris from Ann Arbor wrote in, great countdown list. I really enjoyed listening. Keep it going. And then when you start up a new podcast and you're doing it by yourself, you kind of want the support of your friends. So you kind of go out there and ask people like, hey, what'd you think of the podcast? What'd you think of the concept? So I take it to one of my longtime friends, Kenny, and he's like, you got to tweak the concept. I can't believe you talked about everything that everyone else talked about. Why don't you talk about the fringe things or add some things to the list? In essence, the podcast for Kenny, it had its intended consequences in terms of making a list. And there's a lot of things going on right now in the world of sports. And I only want to rank 5 of them. And that's the premise of the podcast, is that I'm going to rank the top 5 stories that occur in the world of Detroit sports and give my opinions on them. So Kenny disagreed with probably most of them and had said, like, who wants to listen to the Doc rant about Kelly Stafford for 6 minutes? Well, Kenny, the seed was planted and Kelly Stafford again went off. But for your constructive criticism, you did make a segment now on this very podcast, where I'm going to call it the Kenny Frenzel's Honorable Mentions, where these are the stories that don't make the top 5, but are news and noteworthy. We got 3 of them this week. Al Avila, Tigers, came out and said that re-signing his son, Alex Avila, is not a priority, which likely signifies that Alex Avila's tenure here in Detroit is likely to be done, which is a good thing. I don't think that, right now the catcher position is one where we have great need. James McCann established himself as a leader on this team, and he's going to be the catcher of the future. So Alex Avila is no longer going to be with the Tigers. He had a good run here, always dazzled the fans with key home runs, but in the end, the last couple years were a little bit up and down for Alex, and he'll tell you himself that he didn't really perform at the level that he should have, and now he's going elsewhere. So the first honorable mention, Alex Avila, not with the Tigers probably next season. Second, Kenny Frenzel, honorable mention. Bill Ford Jr. came out earlier this week and said that, no, right now my role with the team has lessened. Martha Ford is the owner. She's the one making the decisions. She's the one going out to the owners' meetings. She's the one that spoke to Roger Goodell when this whole Backgate incident happened. And I'm like, wow. Bill Ford Jr. was one who was outspoken, and he's the one that kind of comes out and understands the fans' frustrations, understands how this Lions legacy is one of really not too much success. Martha Ford, you haven't heard all that much from her, from your 90-year-old owner. And it got me thinking, I wonder what it's like at these owners' meetings when you have like half of the room are older than 60 years old. And then you have these old-time owners who probably aren't even really concerned with the rules, aren't concerned with the fans. I'm telling you, when these owners have these meetings, I don't think they talk about rules. I don't think they talk about procedures. I really think they just look at a bunch of numbers and they look at, okay, were our revenues up 10% this year or were they down 10% this year? And if the revenues are up 15%, then everyone's happy, smiling, joking it up. And if revenues are down, then maybe they shoot Roger Goodell a funny look here and there and be like, hey, Roger, your big fat commission bonus is not going to be in the mail this year if you don't boost up these revenues. But I'm fascinated. I would love to see what it's like with all these multi-millionaire owners and some owners who are billionaires. What do they talk about in these meetings? And what influence does a 90-year-old woman have in an owners meeting? Is she up there trying to make recommendations? It's fascinating, especially this week. And maybe if you stay tuned later in the podcast, the whole ordeal with the Lions might, just might, make our countdown list. The third and final Kenny Frenzel honorable mention goes to my Sparties. They came back and, in the second half versus Rutgers, they came back and put away the victory 31-24. And unfortunately for Rutgers, how embarrassing was that? In that you come back, you make some plays late, and with under a minute left in the fourth quarter, you don't know. How does a quarterback and coach in tandem don't know how many downs there are? But Michigan State was the beneficiary of a really fluky play, one that you're not going to see too often in the world of college football. but the quarterback for Rutgers on fourth down was trying to kill the clock and spike the ball, which in essence ensured the victory for Michigan State and set up the week that will be, and everyone's looking forward to it. This is, as you download this, the Michigan State week. And oh man. So those are the 3 honorable mentions. Kenny, you got yourself a segment. The 3 Kenny Frenzel honorable mentions, they didn't quite make the Doc's top 5, but are valuable stories. Alex Avila likely not to be resigned, not a priority according to his dad. Martha Ford is in charge and making the decisions according to Bill Ford Jr. And Michigan State upping their record to 6-0. And now the Spartans will head to Ann Arbor next week. All right, you've waited. And now the countdown. This is the Detroit Sports Countdown as ranked by the Doc. These are the stories that I felt were the most important this week, and I want to give my opinions on them. And these are my rankings from 5 to 1. And we'll do this each and every week. It's an opportunity to kind of, roughly the podcast is going to go about 30 minutes. And you can leave feedback regarding the rankings at our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. You can tweet me, text me. Everyone knows how to get a hold of me if you want to comment on the rankings or with any of the opinions that I share. All right, starting off, number 5. The number 5 top story, according to the Doc. The Pistons start the preseason. They started on Tuesday, and it was kind of a rocky first week in terms of the preseason games, but not to be too concerned. But the first couple games for the Pistons ended up in losses. But on Tuesday, Stanley Johnson, my goodness, he had a debut and really gave the Pistons fans who showed up and supported the team at the Palace a very nice performance. 26 points. He definitely showed glimpses of why he was drafted at that position for the Pistons and why maybe, just maybe, there is a potential youth movement here in Detroit. And like I've said on previous podcasts with Adam on the Doc and Jock podcast, why not Stanley Johnson? Why not Dylan Larkin potentially being superstars a little bit earlier? Right now in the world of Detroit sports, there's a lot of young players with a lot of talent. Maybe, potentially, Stanley Johnson can be a step above. Maybe he can be a guy that can be a go-to guy. Now, most likely it's not going to happen early. He's going to need to, definitely sit on the bench, come off the bench to start the season and, really learn the game. But I do believe, just based on what I've seen now the first week, that he can contribute, and that's all we need. And then the second game, you got to love a coach like Stan Van Gundy. The second game in the preseason versus Brooklyn was absolutely abysmal, filled with tons of turnovers, selfish play on both the offense and defensive sides. And Stan Van Gundy, even in his second preseason, most people aren't paying attention, comes out at the podium and was like, we played selfish. That was unacceptable. That's not how we want to play. We need to play much better. And even commented this week on the Lions ordeal. And he showed much more anger and frustration than the Lions organization did. That's why you got to respect and like a guy like Stan Van Gundy. He comes out and was like, yeah, the Lions got screwed. It's upsetting. And anyone out there, when you're looking at how a coach presents himself, yes, you want him to be professional, but also you want to get a sense that your coach is on your side, that he's rallying the fans. And right now, a certain other coach, who we'll probably talk about a little later in the countdown, isn't really doing that. But right now, the Pistons in their preseason efforts are the number 5 ranked story this week. All right, number 4. Detroit Tigers also made news in that the general manager came out and, gave a very detailed, press conference and talk with the media this week. And he spoke about the state of the team, and he was very upfront. He was open and honest, and he said that this was, a season to forget. It was a season that was unacceptable, and he talked about the future. And the number 4 ranked story is the Tigers general manager, Al Avila, coming out and saying what his plans are for the future. And what he came out and said was, this team is going to go all in 2016. They are not going to significantly reduce the payroll, which leads most of us to believe that the payroll is likely to be in the $170 to $180 million range. That's a good thing. If the Tigers are still going to spend, then you have hope that this team is going to get back to the playoffs. And everyone that you talk to and everyone that's kind of looking at things will say, there's a team out there that you can look to that you can kind of model in terms of they had a terrible year last year, but this year came back and turned things around and are now battling in the playoffs, which the Tigers are not. Texas Rangers last year lost 95 games. They retooled a little bit, and they've had a successful season, and now they're battling, and they're in the playoffs. Al Avila came out and spoke to the media and had said that he believes that the biggest need right now is starting pitching, and he's going to look to potentially get not just one, but two starting pitchers to help this ball club. And when you really look at it, that really, in essence, means that, in all honesty, then you're going to have Justin Verlander, Anibal Sanchez, one of the three either being Daniel Norris, Matt Boyd, Fulmer, maybe at outside chance. But if Al Avila's looking to get two more starters via free agency, that's probably going to be a big area of spending for the Tigers this offseason. And Al Avila did mention a name that was kind of forgotten this year based on his terrible performance to start the year. But Shane Green is going to return, and he might have a chance to fill out that rotation. I do think they've observed the likes of Kyle Ryan, Lobstein, and it's going to be tough for them. They may be guys that are destined for the bullpen, because that bullpen also, in my opinion, also needs to be looked at and retooled and reshaped. Al Avila has come out and he said that he spoke to the team, and he's kind of ensured, and when he spoke to the team, told them that, hey, listen, this was a terrible season. This was an aberration. We are going to work night and day to find the best guys for this team to make a run in 2016. And that gives me a little bit of sense of confidence. In all honesty, the toughest part, though, is Al Avila stuck with the same manager. So it's going to make his moves interesting in terms of what type of pitcher is he going to bring in. Is he going to bring in a guy who's a top-end $15 to $20 million a year pitcher, or is he going to look to secondary guys who are maybe in that $12 to $15 million range? So I'm fascinated to see which two starters he targets. But, he came out and said, Mike Ilitch has given me the full support to do what I need to do to retool this team. And with that said, he's worked under Dave Dombrowski. They've brought free agents in here before. I have confidence that they'll bring in the right guys. Will they be managed properly? That will be one of the big questions. So the number 4 story this week, the Tigers general manager coming out and speaking regarding the future of your Detroit Tigers. And now, the number 3 story. We talked about it extensively. Monday Night Football, the showcase where the nation gets the chance to relax after the beginning part of their work week. They sit down, they get to watch a football game. It was a defensive battle. Obviously the two offenses didn't do a whole heck of a lot, and the Seattle Seahawks did a tremendous job of, keeping the Lions in the game with some turnovers. But in the end, the Lions had a drive. Finally, we all waited for the offense to click. And again, some people would say they need to be in that 2-minute offense much more. And they were effective in the 2-minute offense late in the game. They were driving the ball. Stafford looked crisp. He looked organized. He got the ball up and down the field. They were making plays. And then it happened. Matthew Stafford decided it wasn't a running play. He passed it to Megatron, your superstar. Everyone knows that in key situations, you want to go to your best players, whether it would be Golden Tate, whether it be Calvin Johnson. So he goes to Megatron. Megatron makes a move. Boom. Cam Chancellor punches the ball out. The ball is in the end zone, and it's batted out of the end zone. Everyone's like, oh, great play by the Seattle defender to knock the ball out. Well, after the game was over, after the Lions exchanged pleasantries with Seattle, after they exchanged jerseys, people were starting to rumble that, hey, that play, knocking the ball out of the end zone is illegal. And then your tweets start coming in like, uh-oh, the Lions got screwed. And you're just absolutely devastated if you're a Lions fan. Not only did you compete against Seattle, but you got screwed royally by the NFL referee who was standing right there looking at it. So that's the number 3 story, Batgate, and everything that went with it is so fascinating. On the very basic level, nobody in that building knew what was going on. Nobody knew of Rule 12.4.1. Nobody knew that knocking the ball out, intentionally, batting the ball is an illegal play. Not your head coach, not anybody in the Lions who's watching in the booth, not any of the players. They're all coming out, being honest, saying like, hey, we didn't know the rule. Even the head coach of the other team, Pete Carroll, didn't know the rule. But really, most importantly, when you look at it, if the NFL referee doesn't know the rule, then that's really devastating for the league and really the sorts of frustration that many of the people here who do podcasts on the network had. It was so frustrating. And then what compounded the story this week was the fact that the fans were angry, the fans were upset. The fans are wondering, when is the league going to stop screwing the Detroit Lions? What avenue do the Lions have to talk to the league? Because just remember, just a few months back. In the playoff game, the Lions got screwed by a call that was made properly, the pass interference, that was picked up. To this day, I have never seen a pass interference that was called and then picked up. There's situations when there's tips and things like that, where that's the one situation where, if a pass is tipped, it allows the defender to be then, grabbed and things like that. But in terms of a straight pass and a call that was made that was right, was picked up. I don't know if the referee was scared or if he didn't want to make that call in Dallas. I don't know. But in this situation, you thought, okay, Caldwell came out this week and was like, we have protocol that we take that's professional. Or obviously, you used the same protocol back during the playoffs versus Dallas, and it didn't do nothing. So that's where a lot of people are saying it's time. It's not just an isolated incident. The league has been screwing the Lions now several times where rules and things, the catch, the process of the catch was made after Calvin Johnson, in that game versus Chicago, caught the ball late. And just because the ball hit the ground, they said that he didn't have the catch throughout the process of the catch. And I use air quotes here. So it's just frustrating that, the Lions are always taking the high road, yet they keep getting screwed. And everyone's like, Caldwell after the fact was coached up and, the PR staff spoke to him and he was saying that, yes, we're angry. Martha Ford was at the owners meeting. Yes, we spoke to everybody. Well, yeah, I'm sure that you spoke to him and we're like, okay, yeah, What are we going to do in the future? Okay, you make a new rule? Okay, great. How does it affect us now? Yeah, exactly. It doesn't. We still got a loss. We still came home on that plane 0-4. And then the league, as a sign of even more disrespect, which I thought was classic. I mean, the NFL screwed the Lions. They totally embarrassed themselves. Dean Blandino gave two different answers within 30 minutes, saying initially after the play happened that it was subjective. Then 30 minutes later saying no, and you know what, in essence, that it was a correct, that the referee made an incorrect call, that he should have called it, and the Lions should have got the ball back. The league had the nerve to actually probably send a letter to our quarterback, Matthew Stafford, and tell him that he was fined for wearing inappropriate cleats. So not only do they suffer the indignity of a loss that they didn't deserve, but Matthew Stafford lost paper this week. You believe that? Matthew Stafford lost money this week, approximately $6,000 for the first-time violation of uniform policy regarding his cleats that were the inappropriate color. And it took his wife to send out an Instagram post regarding text messages that she sent to her husband regarding this whole situation. Are you kidding me? She showed more anger, talking about, how the league needs to worry about making sure their referees know what's going on instead of the nonsense of finding our quarterback. Again, like I said, the Lions probably mishandled the situation. The Lions did not deserve their fate. The Lions deserve to at least have professional referees and umpires in the games that they're playing in, and we didn't get that. So the number 3 story is Lions Batgate. Moving right along, the number 2 story on the Detroit Sports Countdown podcast, Dylan Larkin made his debut for the Red Wings on Friday night versus Toronto. I mean, it was really a perfect scenario. You have the old coach of the Red Wings, Mike Babcock. You had the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are a natural rival for our Detroit Red Wings, an original 6 matchup to start the season. Toronto had already started the season earlier with a loss, and Jimmy Howard was in net. You have a new head coach for the Red Wings, Jeff Blashill, and you have a reshaped lineup with some additions on free agency, but with an influx of young players marked by Dylan Larkin, and everyone was saying, is he going to score? What should we expect from him in terms of a point total? And really fascinated that he's 19 years old, very mature, very poised for his age. Not only that, but starting on the first line with Justin Abdelkader and Henrik Zetterberg, the captain. And he did not fail to disappoint. Got points in his first game, and then he took a play end-to-end and scored in his first NHL game. What a moment. I mean, you got your family in the crowd. You got everyone supporting you. They pan to his parents who are thrilled. There was a buzz, a different kind of feel around the Red Wings to start the year. In years past, Mike Babcock and Ken Holland took the philosophy of not starting a lot of young guys to start the year. A lot of them started in Grand Rapids. But this year, a lot of young players that we have seen previously in Grand Rapids are here. Polkinen started the year here with the big club. Dylan Larkin's here. And so the Red Wings just thrashed Toronto. And Dylan Larkin contributed with assists and a goal. And the Red Wings played great. And then they go the next night, Saturday night, versus Carolina. And again, he's on the ice for several goals. Dylan Larkin my goodness, is a guy that's going to be a playmaker, and it's exciting to see. And I'm thrilled that a young guy that's in a Detroit team can be a superstar, not only on the team, but maybe across the NHL. If Dylan Larkin is a superstar player, if he's a guy that is going to be here for a while, I can't wait to watch it. Now, there's some talk that if Pavel Datsyuk was on the roster, if he wasn't injured, would Dylan Larkin be on this team? And is he going to be here the whole year? If he keeps up the point pace that he's on right now, you can't send him down. He has to be up here. And I'm hoping that he does get a chance to earn his time on the ice and really showcase his talents. And I do think that he may not ever see Grand Rapids if he keeps up this pace. The dude has natural scoring ability. He's very fast. The thing that I like is Jeff Blashill said it. He's a guy that didn't play the wing all that much in junior hockey or things like that. He was a centerman, but he was able to play on the wing, being centered by Henrik Zetterberg and Justin Abdelkader. Abdelkader got a hat trick in his first game. And there are certain situations where guys who are on the ice who are playmakers really can improve. You know, if Justin Abdelkader is a guy that's going to score 25, 30 goals because Larkin's there, you got to keep him here. And it's super exciting because right now the Wings have started off the year 2-0, 4 points, and they started off fast, and there's a lot of great things to watch. Right now with the Red Wings, it's great. It's great that we can tune in because a lot of people would say, talk to me when the playoffs are here. And they really wouldn't pay attention. But right now with the influx of young players, with the excitement and the buzz going around with Dylan Larkin, it's all good. It's very exciting. And it's one of those things where you can't wait to see what Dylan Larkin does. And for right now, I'm excited. I'm watching each and every game. I want to see how Dylan Larkin responds to the pressure, how he evolves once the league sees a little bit more film on him and maybe start checking him, start doing some things to try to take him off his game. How does he adjust? Because initially, his initial talent will help him early on. But once the other teams, the better teams, and we'll get a chance to see how the Wings look against one of the better teams this Tuesday, the 13th, at the Joe versus Tampa Bay. I can't wait. That's a must-see game. I can't wait to watch it. But the number 2 story this week, Dylan Larkin and the Red Wings starting the year with a great victory versus Toronto. The number 2 ranked story on the Detroit Sports Countdown. And now you've waited. Thank you so much for downloading on all our platforms and listening on this Sunday. And this podcast will come out each and every Sunday, ranking the top 5 stories. You can find this podcast at DetroitSportsPodcast.com, iTunes, Stitcher, Podomatic, the DetroitSportsNation.com website. We always want to thank them for hosting and supporting our podcast network. All right, I'm a Sparty. I have to admit that. The doc went to school at Michigan State. So I'm hearing it right away this morning before I recorded this podcast. I got a text from my boy Phil. Seriously, bro, how nervous and scared are you for next Saturday? I'm not scared at all. I am confident that it's going to be a good game. Now, obviously, I would be more comfortable if it was like last year and Brady Hoke was coaching Michigan, but it's going to be a good football game. That's all you can ask for. What's going to happen? It's early. We got to see how the injuries shake out, but it's Michigan State week. I'm a Sparty. I respect Michigan. I know they have a good and above-average head coach. They have a much better head coach than Brady Hoke, so Michigan is doing great. But the number 1 ranked story, according to the doc, U of M, 3 straight shutouts. Oh, my goodness. I didn't even know that in 1980, Michigan had a streak of 3 straight shutouts. That, in this day and age, it's far more remarkable to do that based on the offenses that are presented this year. Now, there is a caveat in that they did play freshman quarterbacks the last 3 weeks, and they were at home. But even with that, freshman quarterback that come in and play in the Big Ten have talent. They have talent around them. Shutouts, not giving up 3, 5, 10, anything like that. No pick sixes, no defensive points allowed. But for Michigan to come out there and really showcase in front of their fans at the Big House what they can do on the defensive side of the ball, it's just made things so much more exciting. Right now, the narrative is going to be, can Michigan State score on that Michigan defense? It's going to be fascinating. And heaven forbid that Michigan State goes to Ann Arbor and doesn't score any points. I mean, I don't think we'll hear about it ever. I think that'll be brought up in each and every game going forward. Kind of like maybe the stat that the last couple of years Michigan's had negative rushing yards. I'm going to bring that up. I'm going to kind of bring up old wounds. Remember Michigan when you were under Brady Hoke? You couldn't run the ball. Was there a game, if I recall? Is my memory correct because I'm getting older? Did Michigan have a game with like negative 69 yards rushing? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe check the facts out there if you're listening. But right now, Michigan has a new team. They're confident. They're going to potentially be ranked in the top 10 or between 10 and 15, depending on how the new polls shake out. Because with that victory versus number 13, Northwestern, Michigan is going to be coming into that game with full confidence that they can beat Michigan State, that they can at least hang with Michigan State. And it might be a defensive battle. Now, if you sit here, you're going to tell me, you know what's going to happen. You don't know. You don't know how Jake Rudock is going to look. You know there's certain matchups that are going to be key. How does Connor Cook respond to the early pressure that Michigan's defense is going to bring? Do the Michigan State receivers, and they had a decent game versus Rutgers, are they able to make plays versus the Michigan secondary? And right now, Michigan and Michigan State both have key injuries that have affected both their lineups. So you can't use the injury card out there, Sparty fans, because the guys that are backups are, 3 and 4 star guys. They're going to be expected to, make plays. So I won't sit here and make excuses if Michigan wins. They'll be the better team if they win. But each and every game you look at, you go with the facts that will help teams win. If Michigan State can win the battle up front with the offensive line and get more rushing yards than Michigan, that'll dictate their chances of success versus Michigan. If Michigan State can dominate on the offensive line and can get Madre London and LJ Scott, get them going early, if they can mix up their plays and get the wide receivers out there and get them going, you got Burbridge, you got Kings, you got Arnett out there, and you don't know now we have maybe an emerging tight end in Lang. You're gonna, and maybe if we get Josiah Price back, some offensive linemen that have been hurt to return, if Conklin can come back, you never know. I know that Jake Allen injury is significant. That didn't look good. But if we can get some linemen returning, if we can get things going, then Sparty has a chance. But it's a must-see game. It's going to be a game that you're not going to want to miss. On Saturday, 3:30, I'm looking forward to it. Can Michigan limit Michigan State's offense? Are there any new wrinkles that both these coaches are gonna try against each other? It's going to be a fascinating week. I look forward to the banter at Detroit Podcast, and I look forward to the Michigan arrogance. I love it. The Michigan arrogance allowed the last 7 years to be so sweet for State fans. I don't hate Michigan fans. You love your team. I love my Sparties. It's going to be fun. I'll look forward to all the texts from my friends and family who support Michigan. And you better believe if Michigan State wins, there'll be some text, and tweets flying from this end. That's what makes it fun. As long as it's respectful, as long as it's not like, personal. Hey, I understand. Michigan loves to clown on Michigan State. And still to this day, people will write on Facebook and Twitter and things like that. Oh, who cares about the success of Michigan State? They'll always be little brother. That's what I love about it. That's what I love about, the rivalry, the trash talk, the hatred between both teams. And now it's that week. And I love to kick off this week by talking about it. But don't sit here and call me a homer because I made the U of M defense and their 3 straight shutouts the number one story this week in Detroit sports. I thank you again for listening and talking about the rankings and sharing this podcast with a friend and family. I get a chance to do some fun things with this podcast network, and I get a chance to do and put on shows and podcasts that I want to do. And it's because of you, the listeners, who are downloading and sharing and showing support by visiting our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. For the Doc, this has been the Detroit Sports Countdown Podcast. Thank you again. Look forward to it next week. If you have any comments or questions, shoot us a tweet at Detroit Podcast. See everybody next week.